Welcome again, my good students, to another session, another episode where we still venture and go deep in poetry because it's one of the most tested. In paper 2, poetry has around 20-25 marks. So you can see it's like a lot of marks if you go on missing. So again, I felt it's good and very helpful if we still venture into another side of it where we are going to discuss and generally see styles in poetry. Now, in a previous lesson that we did, we talked about how rhythm is achieved in poetry, and we saw the likes of consonants, assonance, alliteration, we saw repetition, we have ideophones, we have and so on and so forth. We have rhyme and so on and so forth. So now here in poetry, styles are categorized into two aspects. In poetry, styles are categorized into two aspects. The first one is the sound devices or the sound patterns. They form styles in poetry. Are we together? And I told you again, they are referred to again as the mnemonic features now in poetry. So, sound patterns, sound devices are part of styles in literature. Now because we did that one in a previous class, today I felt it's a good thing that we venture into the other side of it, which is now the figurative language of it, or the figures of speech in poetry. Are we together up to there? Because we did the first part in a previous class, I felt it good. Like it's quite sensible that we just don't check or maybe discuss one side and leave the other side hanging. So the other side of it is here, like the other side of the styles of poetry, where we are going to see the figures of speech or the figurative language in general. So the first feature that you're going to check, or the first figure of language that of speech that you're going to check is a simile. So I'm so sure you know what a simile is. This is where comparison of two unrelated things is done using words like, as, etc., etc. So an example, maybe you can say she is as tall as a giraffe. The use of like and as dash is dash, things like that. A metaphor, a metaphor compares two unrelated objects, and a very key thing, two unrelated objects, by referring to one as the other. You can say he is a lion. What else can you say? She is a peacock. Maybe she's proud, beautiful, things like that. So when you're trying to compare two unrelated objects, directly referring to one as the other. So the next one is personification, giving non-human things, and let's pay attention to this particular case in personification. This is where non-human things. So anything which is not human, be it an animal, be it a stone, be it a locker, whichever thing, be it a door, anything which is not human, and maybe it has been given human-like traits or qualities or abilities, there is a case of personification. Anything which is not human, but it has been given human abilities, human qualities, there is a case of personification. Now maybe you can say the wind was whistling, the wind cannot whistle, and the buildings bend to let it pass. Buildings cannot bend, they are not human. You are given a building a human-like ability or characteristic, the characteristic that it can bend. So that's what personification is. Now we have the next one is symbolism. And now again pay close attention to this, because symbolism now can be understood from the context of a metaphor, you know, from the context of like a bigger metaphor, because we're using something small to represent a big thing, you know, where a thing or a symbol is being used to represent a bigger thing. So, or an idea. You can say white represents peace, water represents life, or symbolizes, things like that. Again, I'm so sure, let's try having this particular symbolism case. Assuming a poem, someone is talking about the road led me to two divergent paths. The road led me to two divergent paths. Now, the word road can be symbolic, or there could be a case of symbolism. Road meaning a decision. Like the decision took me to two divergent paths. Like this particular decision took me to a point where I have to either pick this or go with this particular choice. I hope you're getting the point, where a particular thing can be used to symbolize or infer to a bigger idea. Good. Now the next figure of speech I want us to check is oxymoron. And now, as you all know, we have, and it has been so evident in many cases that we have had, is students not being in a position to tell the difference between oxymoron and paradox. But we are going to check them here so that you don't confuse. So, oxymoron is the use of contrasting words side by side. Now, a very key feature that I want you to note is contrasting words. Are we together? Just a word and another word. But they are not the same. They cannot lay on the same part. So, a poor millionaire. Someone who is poor, and again, they are a millionaire. That's oxymoron. Again, a good mistake. Good mistake. Those are two contrasting words. You know, something like what else? A cold fire. Cold fire. I mean, if it's fire, it cannot be cold. I hope you're getting the point. Okay, so oxymoron. Now, the next one is irony. Irony is the contrast imagery that brings out the opposite of what is expected. This is contrast imagery that brings out the opposite of what is expected. Though I'm not going to discuss like the whole thing, we have dramatic irony, we have situational irony, and we have the other one is verbal irony. Dramatic irony, situational irony, and verbal irony. Anyway, I'll discuss about those in another session. So, we have sarcasm. Sarcasm is saying one thing while you actually mean the other with intentions of mocking, scorning, or taunting. Saying one thing while you actually mean the other with intentions of mocking, scorning, or taunting. Now, I'm so much sure that maybe in your classrooms there's that one friend of yours that in a sarcastic manner. Like you're sure you maybe perform poorly, maybe in mathematics, in whichever subject, and they just go like, hey, umeiva hii subject, and in real sense, umepata zero. Okay, that is an aspect of sarcasm. So, the next one is satire, use of humor to criticize people's stupidity or vices in the society. That is what you call satire, use of humor to criticize. Now, a very key word. That particular humor has to criticize something, not just a plain humor. So, that we say is a case of satire. The humor has to criticize something, not to mock, not to scorn, not to taunt. That is sarcasm. But for satire, it has to criticize maybe a person in whichever thing they are doing. Now, the next one is juxtaposition. Juxtaposition is where two things are placed together to create contrasting effect. Two things are placed together to create contrasting effect. Now, the pastor is holy, the wife is a witch. Don't confuse it with paradox. I'll tell you why. The pastor is holy, the wife is a witch. When you just have two things placed together to create a contrasting effect. Are we together? That is what you call juxtaposition. Apostrophe. This is where the persona addresses an imaginary thing or a non-living thing. Are you together? Apostrophe is where the persona or any character, where they address an imaginary being or thing or a non-living thing. That is what we call apostrophe. And now we have paradox. Now, oxymoron. I want you to pay close attention to oxymoron, juxtaposition, and paradox. Now, in paradox, paradox is a statement that appears ironical but makes sense at close examination. So, for oxymoron, it's about words. Are we together? And those particular words have to be in close friends, like side by side. For juxtaposition, the words are not side by side, because you can say the pastor is holy, the wife is a witch. Just for contrast. That's why we have juxtaposition. In paradox, is a statement that appears ironical but makes sense at a close examination. What really do we mean? We mean, an example of which is going to help us demystify this. The largest taxi company in the world, which is Uber, does not own a car. The largest taxi company in the world does not own a car. And in the real sense, Uber does not own a car. Because you go buy your car, you come to us. Because we are the company, you just have you in the system. So you own your machine, you own your car, but you come to us. So it's paradoxical that the largest taxi company in the world does not own a car. Let's think of another example. A tailor makes suits, expensive suits, and they cannot be, most of them, they cannot even afford to buy or to purchase those particular suits. So if you're a tailor and you're making an expensive suit, why can't you be in a position to purchase such a suit, which is so expensive? Why make a suit which is expensive that you cannot even purchase? So it is paradoxical. Are you getting the point? Yeah, and so on. Just to add on. Yeah, so the last part that I wanted us to check is still on stance in poetry, is what we refer to as metonymy, which is using an object associated with another to refer to the very thing that you're talking about. Using an object associated with another to refer to the very thing. Now, the Blues beat the Reds. That's an example. Now, you're so sure if you're a football fanatic or a fan of football, Chelsea is as the representation of color blue, you know, and Liverpool, they call themselves the Reds. So the Blues beat the Reds, of which this is impossible. Chelsea cannot beat Liverpool. So blue for Chelsea FC and red for Liverpool FC. So we have rhetorical questions. That's the next figure of speech. These are questions that do not need answers. I'm so sure you've come across this, maybe even when you're doing or reading the set books, and you know what they are. So we have a synecdoche, which is using part of an object to represent the whole thing. Using part of an object to represent the whole thing. So he has bought new wheels. So the part which we are concerned with is the new wheels. So the new wheels means he has bought a new car. Are you getting the point? So basically that's what figures of speech in poetry or styles in poetry, what they are and what you're supposed to discuss at large. And always don't miss the point, maybe because of you are being confused, like what am I supposed to write here, or can this be this and not this? My good students, always take your time. Don't rush to answer questions. Always think of what you're going to write before you have it even down on the paper. So have a nice play of the same, and I'm so sure you're going to have it made, and we are going to change and have a positive mentality towards poetry. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.